Most golfers believe every club in their bag goes a different distance. 150 with the 7-iron, 130 with the 8-iron, nice clean 10-yard gaps. But once you start measuring real shots, something strange starts to show up. Several of those clubs start landing in the same place. And once that starts happening, the whole idea of how a golf bag is supposed to work starts to look very different. This is 3-Putt Polly, aka the Golf Tech Nerd, where I'm a regular golfer using data to make smarter decisions and play better golf. Now let's get into it. So let's look at where those distance numbers actually come from. If you want to see this for yourself, just try a simple experiment. Ask some folks at the range, how far does your 7-iron go? Most answers will come quickly. 150, 155, 160. Those numbers usually sound very certain, but most of the time they're not based on actual data. They're based on memory. And the memory golfers rely on is usually the best shot they've ever hit with that club. So think about what actually happens when someone hits 10 shots with a 7-iron. One might go 150, a couple might go 145, several might carry somewhere between 135 and 140, and a few might come up even shorter. So if you average those shots together, the real number might end up closer to being something like 138. But when that golfer steps onto the course, what number do they remember? Not 138. They think about 150, because the brain tends to remember the perfect swing instead of the typical swing. Now, imagine that golfer is standing on a par 3 that measures 150. They believe their 7-iron goes 150, so they pull out the 7-iron. But their actual average is about 138, which means most of their shots are finishing short of the green. If there's a bunker in front, they find the bunker. If there's water, they're wet. And occasionally, one shot comes out perfectly and lands right where they hoped. But the majority of shots come up short. So from the golfer's perspective, it feels confusing. They know they can hit the club that far. They've seen it happen before, but the course keeps telling a different story. So a simple way to see this yourself is to hit a series of normal shots with the same club. 10 balls is enough. Don't try to hit the perfect swing, just make 10 normal swings. Then walk out if you can, or just look at where the ball is actually finished. Most golfers notice the same pattern. There's usually a cluster of shots in the middle. A couple go a little farther, a couple come up short, but the important number isn't the longest one, it's the middle of that cluster. That middle area is your typical distance. This is exactly why launch monitors and shot tracking systems have become so useful. They remove memory from the equation. They don't remember your best swing, they record all of them. The thin ones, the off-center shots, the ones that launch a little high or a little low. And when you look at 10 or 20 shots instead of one perfect swing, the pattern becomes much easier to see. The 150-yard 7-iron often turns into something closer to a 135 to 140-yard average. And that's not a problem at all. That's just what real golf tends to look like. And this is where something interesting starts to happen. Most golfers assume every club in the bag produces a clean distance gap, maybe 10 or 12 yards between clubs. That's at least how the set is designed. But the variation in a real swing is often larger than that gap. A slightly thin shot might lose 15 yards, a slightly heavy one might lose 20. When that happens, the distances from different clubs begin overlapping. A 7-iron, an 8-iron, and sometimes even a 9-iron can end up landing in almost the same area. Not because the clubs are the same, but because the variation in the swing is bigger than the gap between them. So once that overlap appears, the neat distance ladder golfers imagine starts to break down. Instead of a perfect 10-yard progression between clubs, you get clusters. Several clubs that can all produce very similar results depending on the strike. And suddenly, the bag that looked perfectly organized behaves very differently on the course. Now the fix for this is surprisingly simple. Instead of asking how far can I hit this club, the better question is, how far do I usually hit it? That small shift changes how golfers make decisions. Because when you start thinking in averages instead of perfect swings, the game becomes much easier to manage. Better players still hit great shots. They still occasionally hit a 7-iron 150. But they don't treat that shot as their baseline. They treat it as a bonus. Their decisions are built around the distance they hit most often. And that one shift creates a very different pattern on the course. So instead of constantly coming up short, they start reaching the middle of the greens more consistently. Not because their swings are perfect, but because their expectations are realistic. So golf improvement often looks like better swings, but sometimes it's simply just better expectations. When golfers overestimate their distances, the gaps between clubs begin collapsing. And once that happens, several clubs can end up traveling almost the same distance. When you start making decisions based on your typical shot instead of your perfect shot, something interesting happens. The game becomes more predictable. And in golf, predictability is where good decisions begin. Now remember, golf is never perfect, but good data makes the game a lot more understandable. Thanks so much for watching.